class, and welcome to week 3. So as promised, I mentioned that I would have the final project information out there. I apologize, I was supposed to have it out there week 2, but I missed it. Anyhow, once you log into your syllabus, I wanted to kind of give you an overview of explaining this. In my previous classes, I'm so used to explaining it in person, so I'll do the best here. So you'll see a link here called Final Project. Once you click on it, you have these 3 options. You have Final Project Requirements, Final Project Scoring, and Technical Design Document. So if you open one of them, you'll be able to download that document for requirements. So I actually have it open on my other screen, so I'm going to pull it up here and kind of go through it on the screen a little bit. So I'm going to drag this over here. All right, hopefully we can see this. All right. Put it in there. All right, so we have the final project. Due date is the 14th. So that is officially the last day of this class. So you have till midnight. If there is a case that you're running late, please let me know ahead of time. We can make arrangements. But I have to have all your grades in by, I think, the 18th. Anyhow, the description application is based on some of the potential applications that are listed below, and we'll talk about that shortly. The requirements are to develop at least a minimum of 5 screens. Now, it could be 5 screens all on one sheet, but it has to be up to 5 different screens. These types of required objects, so I require that you use some of the objects that we learned: text box, drop-down list, button, label, etc. The required features that we learned includes, now I have chapters 1 through 15. Obviously, we haven't gone through all those chapters, but a variety of those chapters instead of including everything. You must include a constructor. You must have some type of conditional statement. It could be if and else. It could be a switch statement, etc., case statement, and methods. So obviously you got a call method. So those are requirements. Use clean source code, meaning if you have source code that you were testing and you're not using, don't comment out. Just remove it completely. Use a legend in your assemblies. Legend is how I mentioned before. At the top you have, you might have name in your code. You might have a created date, modified date, description of that class itself, what it's doing. Must use a swing GUI interface. We're using a GUI interface. This won't be command line. So here's the required projects. You have to pick one of these projects to work on. Something dealing with hospital, restaurant, bus ticket booking, movie ticket, hotel application, car rental, etc. You make the decision. Everyone might do the same thing. That's fine. The other thing is we're using the waterfall, and we didn't really talk much about the waterfall. We did talk about in the first week. Gave you guys the documentation on SCLC life cycles. So I require in this class to do a technical document. So we didn't really get into the details of using either Jira or using TFS, but in this case, it's kind of difficult on online, to be honest with you. So what I will require is you create a technical document. So you can use a workflow diagram such as Visio. If you don't have Visio, there's free tools I mentioned here within Google Chrome that you could use. So we want to create some type of diagram, a workflow of how your process works. And if you have any specific questions on that, please let me know and we'll go through it. Create a user guide. If you're a developer, you'll have to get used to working in an environment where majority of the time is actually when you're in an environment, usually the business analyst will handle this position, handle this job. However, depending on what type of company you work for, you might be working for a startup company and you might be wearing multiple hats. And if that's the case, you're going to need to create a user guide, which is basically a dumbed down version for a user. And you have to think, it's kind of hard as a developer because you think as a developer, but it's hard to think about as a user. How's the user think? So you have to think about that when you're writing your user guide, sorry. In addition, you're going to create a 5 to 7 page slide on PowerPoint presenting a high overview of your application. What are the benefits of your application? Summary, this is what my application does. How can it work, and so forth. One thing I will say is, and I've seen this in some of the previous classes that people did. So I had an example of one that someone wrote a Java application, but they kind of made their presentation as if it was an app, and it wasn't an app. So just an FYI, We're not developing an Android app or an iOS app. So don't make your presentation specific as an app, because then I'm going to expect you to write app code. And that's not what we're writing. We're just writing a desktop application. So just an FYI. Show check-in and checkouts in Git. So that what that means is, you create your project for the first time in Git. You show that. And then if I look at your log, I'll see that Joe Schmo created a project on X date. He or she checked it in and out on this code. Checked this class in and out. I want to see some type of workflow of you checking your code in and out. I don't want to see you checked it in on 1014 and that's it, and your completed code, because you won't get the full points for that, because that's just a one-time thing. So just get used to doing that. Also, grading on the following. So I'll grade on the following. Does your application compile with no errors? That's great. Clean source code. Commenting in your program. Okay, this method does this and that. Follow the life cycle, waterfall life cycle. Well, really, in this case, if you created the technical document and you created a user guide, that's life cycle there. Does your application work efficiently? Basically, when I run it, does it work? Is there any hiccups? Did you use any of the objects that we learned? So back to, what objects did you use? Did you use any data types that we learned, such as integer, string, float, etc.? I kind of look at that. Did you use, because sometimes what I'll find is class students actually using stuff that we didn't even talk about, and that's great. But in this case, we want to concentrate on the things that we're trying to learn in the class. Did you use more than 7 things that we learned in the class? And how was the presentation to the class? Now this one, number 9, don't worry about it, because you're not presenting it to the class. I forgot to take that out of there. All right, so that is that part. And this is just an example of one can have multiple screens. As you see here, when I created this, I created a screen where it had actually 1, 2, 3. And there are actually 3 different classes, but it's into, well, actually 4 different classes, because I have this tutorial thing at the top here, file, edit, view, and so forth. So that is the final project requirements. Let's get into the scoring. So let me pull up the scoring. All right, here we go. So here's how the scoring works. So when you click on the scoring, you'll get the same thing. Actually, let me click on the scoring, because it should come up. All right, it does. Great. So application code, I give up to 190 points. If you use the objects, you get 10 points. Required features, 10 points. Clean source code, up to 5 points. Legend your assemblies, your comments, up to 5 points. Waterfall, if you create the technical document and user guide in a PowerPoint properly, that's an easy 60 points there. Now, it won't be easy doing it, but it's a lot of work, but that's what I'm looking for. And also, I'm not worried about fanciness on the PowerPoint, so don't worry about wasting any time trying to make any fancy slides. I just want to make sure that you got the proof of concept. Check-ins and checkouts, those are worth 5 points. And show that everything's complete is 10 points. Overall, 300 points. That's not bad. The last part is the technical document. So I'll open it up on my computer. So I have to pull it up there. I want to download it again. All right, now this is actually a live example. So in the past, I worked for PNC Bank as a lead software engineer in my group, and I had spent a number of years there. So this is actually a mock-up. I have CCAC, but this is actually, because you'll see some PNC stuff in there, it's because when I worked there, this is an actual application that we developed. So I'm looking for something like this. It has contents. You have the copy, you have the name, CCAC. In this case, you could take the CCAC out and put maybe a logo of something that you created on your own of your company. Name of application, what's it do, more specifics. You can put name, date created, so forth. As you see here, I have a content section. I break it down in each section. I have like home screen. I put will allow user to maintain information, create reports. So in this example, we have 2 buttons here. So I do a screenshot of it. I provide what it's going to do, and then I provide the components, alerts, the description, edits, and types. So this information was actually created by my business analyst when I was developing this application. So she did a wonderful job of providing this. And as you see here, she put business rules. This is what's going to happen. Technical rules. This is a perfect document for someone to put together. So it explains that just some of the basic information. And this would be great if you put this together. Now, I don't have any workflow diagrams in this one, but if you need an example, let me know and I'll get something to you. I won't go through this doc. This is just provides you an example of things to consider when you're creating your document. Now, the user guide, I don't have an example of user guide, but I'm sure that you can Google anything on a user guide. It's just say, hey, you know what? When the application comes up and there's 3 or 4 buttons, describe how to do one of the tasks that you have in mind. So this concludes our video on the final project. You have what, 6-7 weeks or whatever. Well, still have about 6-7 weeks, whatever the case is. You still have actually we're in week 3, so you have 5 weeks. So, but still, you have a significant amount of time to get it completed. There's a form out there on the final project. Any questions? Let me know. All right. Thanks for listening. Have a good week.